Good morning, everyone. Myself, Dr. K. Saravanan, and I heartily welcome our management principal, Dr. R. Kalpana, HOD of CSC department, my colleagues, and my dear students. On behalf of MITS family, I heartily welcome our chief guest, Dr. R. M. Bhavadhani, Associate Professor, SR Eastbury Engineering College, Chennai, who is the speaker of today's session. The topic is deep learning and its application. Dr. R. M. Bhavadharni has specialized in the domain of mobile ad hoc networks at Anna University, Chennai for obtaining PhD. He has done his BTech and MTech in CSE in VLB Janagi ML Coimbatore affiliated to Anna University. His research interest spans across wireless communication, IoT, artificial intelligence, and machine learning in particular. She has published many articles in referred journals and conferences. She also has published a patent. The title is Blockchain-based IoT Consensus Protocol for Smart Home. Ma'am, I thank you for accepting our invitation. Ma'am, thank you for
Okay,
that.
thank you, sir.
Now the
Thank
session can be taken charge by our guest of speaker, Dr. R. M. Bhavadari. Ma'am, you can take care now.
Okay, sir. Thank you for the nice introduction, sir. Good morning, all. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the management of Madanapalle Institute of Technology and Science, Principal, HOD CSE, Dr. Kalpana Madam, and Dr. Saravanan, sir, for giving me this opportunity to deliver a lecture on deep learning and its applications. Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm
Thank you, ma'am.
presenting my screen.
Yeah.
Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Today's topic is deep learning and its applications. The session outline will be, sir, my voice is echoing.
Yeah.
Someone has to mute, it seems. Thank you, sir. So it will start with the introduction to artificial intelligence, and then introduction to machine learning, and then the main topic, introduction to deep learning, and the core architecture of deep learning, that is the neural networks, different learning models, and deep learning applications. To start with, in our day-to-day life, we are using many of the artificial intelligence applications. So what is this artificial intelligence? The term, it was coined in the year 1956 by the researcher McCarthy in a conference. He defines the artificial intelligence as the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, meaning that we are creating the machines that are thinking like human beings. So as an attempt, it is like we are creating the machine, how it has to be behave like a human brain works. And with this knowledge, we have to create the computers, advanced computers. Then what is this human intelligence? It's a composition of abilities like learning, learn from everything, learn from objects, learn from data, learn from everything, environment. It's a composition of abilities like reasoning. Try to reason out for everything happens around us. So human intelligence, it is a combination of all these characteristics. So when we try to design a machine, we try to incorporate all these characteristics into the machine. It's a composition of abilities like perceiving, how we perceive different things, how we perceive different objects, different situations. It's a composition of abilities like understanding of language. You might be hearing the term natural language processing. So, as a human being, we use the language as a communication medium. Different languages are known to the human beings. When we try to train the machine, it has to understand the grammar, different parts of the sentences, different characters, and in what emotion the words are pronounced. in what emotion the sentences are given, either in the text or in the speech. The same characteristic has to be incorporated into the machine. And feeling, you might be aware of the term like sentence analysis, sentiment analysis, emotion analysis. From the tweet, we have to analyze what is the emotion of the end user or the customer. So the machine or the model that we are developing, it tries to understand the feeling of the human being. So as the human intelligence having the different composition of abilities like this, when we make an attempt to create a machine, we try to incorporate these characteristics in terms of algorithms or a huge data set. So artificial intelligence, it's a branch of computer science study that deals with making intelligent machines. So the intelligence of machines, and which aims to create it, that is the task of creating the AI machines. So we might be aware that in our day-to-day life, the applications like we may be using Ola, Swiggy, YouTube, may be using Netflix, so many, Amazon, so many commercial sites are there. So whenever you visit this Amazon for searching for particular product, next time when you visit the same site, it will give you recommendations, or else it will send you some messages like these products are there with this much discount, limited offers available. Such kind of recommendations will be sent to you. How is that all happening? Because the applications which is installed in their site, they keep tracking on all the activities that is done by the user. So there is a history of all your activities in the database. So when you visit the next time, it will search all your database history and how were all your activities with that respected website, and based on that it will try to give recommendations. Even when you type in the Google search, when we start typing some characters, it will give you some predictions, meaning that it understands that, oh, the user is going to search this thing, like that it will try to give some recommendations. So how all these things are happening? It's all because of the artificial intelligence. We may be using this Ola or Uber. So when we try to usually if I'm using the same search source and destination for my travel, so when I use that app, it will try to give the destination whichever I have used more times. So that it is meaning that all my traveling history is with their database. So they use some algorithms and models so that they are making predictions. Okay, this customer will try maybe trying to travel to the same destination to which she or he may have traveled a number of times. So this is where the artificial intelligence comes into play. So how does artificial intelligence work? It needs some input data. So based on the input data, it has to make its training. So once it is trained with the data in the sense anything, it could be an image, it could be a table, it could be a sensor data, whatever it may be. Now the created model in the sense maybe a machine or an algorithm or a program kind of thing, it has to be trained with the input data. Once it is trained with the input data, so whenever I'm giving a new data, it will make prediction based on the trained data. This is a general structure I'm telling. So this picture, it shows that the different types of input that the artificial intelligence applications are using. Data, maybe from sensors, maybe from images, maybe from different sources, different databases. And here the application or the model is trained with the different types of input. And what would be the output? Either it can give you some predictions, or if it is used with some machines, it may make some movements. If it is used with some applications, maybe giving some text predictions. Like this, there are a number of outputs. So it is purely dependent on the application in which we are using this artificial intelligence. Okay, so these are some of the AI applications which we use it in our day-to-day life. A very simple application which we are much familiar with is that email filters, spam or not spam mail. So when you mark a mail as a spam, it will go and sit in that spam folder. So what happens every time when your inbox is receiving the spam mails, which is of the same kind, which you have marked as spam, automatically it detects, oh, this is a spam mail that needs to be placed into that spam. How is this working? It reads the content, it reads the mail content, and it identifies that if the mail content is having so and so text, then it says, it detects, it identifies that, okay, this will be, and this is a spam email, then that will be delivered to the spam folder. Okay. The next one is that smart replies in mail or in Google search in mail. So this is also another example which we are using it in our day-to-day life. When we try to compose an email, for example, I am trying to compose an email to one of my friends. I have chosen my friend's email ID in the recipient box. Then when I try dear, like that, when I'm trying this, it will automatically tell me that dear, what maybe Lata, let it be Lata. It will give me that prediction, Lata, because I have chosen Lata's mail ID in the destination address. Then after that, I'll try to compose my mail content. What happens every time when you try to complete a statement, the machine understands, the application understands that, okay, this is what the sentence this user is trying to compile, and it will give me the prediction. So if that is a sentence what I wanted to complete, then simply just click it, just give a tag that will make the complete sentence. Okay, smart replies. So how is this happening? The application has learned a lot of information from the previously compiled information. So it has a model which is trained with huge amount of data set. With a huge amount of data set, it will make all the predictions. Okay, then next is that LinkedIn, where you may be getting recommendations for your job searches, you may be getting friend requests based on your interest, all notifications you will be receiving. These are all some AI applications which are all we are using in our day-to-day life. The next one is that the another application, Pinterest. So when you use this lens tool, Pinterest lens tool, it will take a picture. So it will try to give all the relevant information or the similar information, similar kind of images and the information to your screen. So this is another kind of application. Chatbots, most of us, we might have faced with this chatbots. When you're visiting a website, you need some assistance. This will pop up as a chatbot, and you can interact with the chatbot to get more information. Google predictive searches. This is what I told, autocomplete predictions. When you make your search, when you start your search in the Google tab, it will list out a number of things. If I start searching Apple, it will give me the list of fruit and the list of phones, whatever things are coming are stored in the database, everything. Sorry, sir, anything? Shall I continue, sir? Fine.
Our head of the department, Dr. on the line, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir,
Good morning, madam.
Good morning, madam. I have some little work in the laboratory. That's why it took time. Very good morning, Badarni, madam.
Good morning.
Okay, so thank you very much for accepting our invitation in spite of your busy schedule. Please, madam, thank you. You can carry on.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, madam.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, madam. You proceed, madam.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So the next application is product recommendation. So when we visit some commercial websites, when we look for search for some products, just I'm making some searches in those websites. So automatically when I visit next time, it will give me the product recommendations, or else I will give some email notifications about the products. Okay. So my searching history or searching activities are stored in their database. So whenever I'm logging into that particular website, they will give me that product recommendations. So they are capturing all my activity with respect to that site, and whatever searches I'm making, whatever specific schemes I'm interested in, and even when I'm making purchases, they will have all my database in how much of amount I'm spending for purchasing these products, how frequently I'm using these sites for purchasing, all these things. So even when we are using Ola, you may be getting some coupons. GPay, you may be getting some coupons. So they are capturing all our activities, and based on that, these applications are giving recommendations. Similarly, the next one is music recommendations. If you go and play some music in YouTube continuously, it automatically creates a playlist. So when it starts with the first song, it understands that, okay, so this user will like to hear the next song as this one, and when I'm playing the second song, it will understand, okay, the third song might be this one. Like that, it will be giving some recommendations. If frequently I'm hearing the same set of songs, even without creating any playlist there, it will automatically suggest me a playlist like this is how you will hear, like that. And the next one is that financial institutions for fraud prevention. Okay, this is related to finance and bank sector. So they will also capture all my transaction activities. Like whenever they find, when the database is finding or the AI application is finding some abnormal activity, they will try to give a message or alert kind of thing to the user. Okay, so how this is happening? Again, all my transaction details are captured here. So what is happening here, when they identify suddenly there is a bulk transaction or bulk transfer of amount from my account to another account, then they will ask, is this you? Confirm through email or confirm through SMS, something like that. So it is meaning that throughout the year or over a number of years, all my transactions are with them, and when they suddenly face this abnormal activity, this application will raise an alarm. Maps and directions. Even this is a real-time map we will be using for some kind of what map-related applications. When you're traveling, you might have faced this when when you use Ola or Uber. It will tell you, like at this particular time, this road may be congested. You can take an alternate route, or else it will show you the graph, like some part of your graph or the line will be in dark color, meaning that this is in high traffic, so that you can plan for the next alternate route, such kind of things. So obviously it is meaning that real time updation is there. It is giving me the correct data at the time it is given, so that I can plan for alternative schedule. That's what the next one, ride sharing app. So you will get the live location, and whenever there is a problem in my route, I can take diversion based on the traffic pattern. And the next one is digital voice assistance, right? So this also Alexa, Siri kind of thing. So whatever, it recognizes your voice, so whatever command in whichever slang you are telling, it will all understand. So based on that, it will do the jobs. Smart home devices, using a mobile phone, we can control a number of devices in our home. So you can monitor, you can control the devices even though you're not at home. You can monitor what is happening in your home, and you can control all your appliances at home. So these are some of the AI applications that we are using in our day-to-day life. So apart from this, AI is playing a role in these applications, space program. So where this is actually a Mars lander. So what it does, it is there in the Mars, and it tries to dig some soil in, and it takes some picture of the soil or some kind of stuff there, and it will send it to the earth, so that they can make the predictions, or they can take the next level of step based on the images or the kind of data that is captured and sent by the Mars lander. This is another area, prosthetic limbs. So when the human being hand or this is mainly, it is focusing here on the arms, limbs. So if it is amputated, so they can fix this machine kind of thing. They, based on their mind waves, this prosthetic limbs is controlled. So this is exactly shown how actual machine will be, and actually the final thing will be like a skin kind of color cover will be there, so that we cannot find the difference between the actual one and the prosthetic limbs. Surgical systems. So in the medical field also, this AI is playing a major role. We might have heard of the term robotic surgery. So instead of human beings, robotics are placed to do critical surgeons. So these are some of the advantages of using this AI with robotic for the medical surgery. An enhanced visual field. So the human being may be sitting in front of a computer, and with the help of the computer, he may be operating the robots. So he gets the whole visualization of in which part is being operated. More precise surgery, access to hard to reach places, obviously, because very minute devices and the kind of device that can be injected or that can get into deeper parts of the human being can be operated using AI application, less carrying and less risk of infection and blood loss. So this is another kind of area where AI is playing a major role. And these are some of the home appliances where the AI application can control these home appliances. And this is the digital secretary, which is mainly voice control. This is another domain. And this is the military sector. Instead of human being, we can fix the machines that are controlled by the applications. So we can save human lives, and the machines are more accurate. We can have more precision in predicting the enemies and the enemy's place. And this is again a space application. So where we can place robots to capture uh, the stuff that is in another planet, and we can plan for the next steps. Underwater mining, even instead of using these divers, we can use these machines to capture what is underwater. So these things can be, but in over the in the land space, we'll have to have a system that typically being operated by the human beings. We can capture, for example, you might have heard of this water removal of plastics and other debris from the water. Okay, so in that case, that machine has to go into deep of the water, and it has to identify what kind of plastic is there. It has to do all these analysis. So when the place is not reachable to human beings, those and all can be reached using the machines and can be controlled and operated by the applications. Right. So now we have seen some of the applications where we are using this artificial intelligence both in the research sectors, medical sectors, as well as in our day-to-day life. Now this is a broad area, which this area it is an attempt that tries to create machines that mimics human intelligence. So here we may be using some kind of models, including machine learning. I'm telling. The machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence where we use some statistical models in order to make some predictions or some classifications. Here also we use a input data, but the features are extracted and it is given as input by the human being. So some to some level we have human intervention in the machine learning. And the next one is a deep learning. This is again a subset of machine learning, which is composed of complex algorithms that tries to learn by its own from the huge amount of data set. So here we need huge amount of data because the machine or the model which we are creating, it learns by itself from the huge amount of data that we are supplying to the deep learning model. So mainly we may be using the applications like image recognition, speech recognition. When we want to have more accuracy, then we are moving towards this deep learning. So this is what a machine learning, a traditional programming we are giving. We have a system. We will be developing a program and we will be testing this program with the data, and we'll see whether we are getting the correct output or not. But in machine learning, I will give the input and I will tell this is how my output data will be. I will be telling the output to the machine also. Now what happens, the model is created by the system. So once it is created, then I will be validating the model. Okay, now the model is created. Is it working properly? Because I have told the machine what is my input and what is my output. Now it is ready. Now I will test with the new kind of data. If the same kind of accuracy, what is in real and what is I'm getting, then I'm getting in the sense, then I can say that my model is more accurate. This is another research part where you can concentrate on improving the accuracy and other features. So this picture, it gives a generalized view of machine learning where the input is my labeled data, and I use some kind of machine learning algorithm. Then as an output, I'm getting a learned model. Then after that, this part we call it as training because I have created a model using my data. So this part is training, and this is actual prediction, or we call it as a testing. What I'm doing, I'm just validating my model. I have created a model here. I've created a model here. I'm just checking my model with the input data, which is different from this one. Okay, so if I'm getting more accurate, and as an output I'm getting some prediction values or prediction predicted class, something kind of thing. And if it is correctly working, then I can say that my model is working correctly or it is more accurate. Then what are the different types of learning? These are the different types of learning, literally. Supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning is there. What is this supervised learning? It is like uh, in a classroom, a teacher is teachers. Okay, so the students, they are listening, so they will it is like someone is there who is teaching everything, and the students is understanding the things. So the same kind of thing is happening in the supervised learning. Now to this model, what happens, I'm giving the output, sorry, I'm giving the input and output also told to the machine. So if this is the input, this should be the output. Now this is how it tries to the machine, it tries to understand, okay, if this is how the input, then this should be the output. In such a way the model has to work. The model has to get trained. So one example is given here, email classification. So as I said, if I'm giving my, I said that these are all the mails that has to be put into the spam mail. These are all the mails that are to be put into for example official, and some mails are marked for entertainment, something kind, some kind of folders I have created, and I have marked, if this mail is from the recipient, the particular recipient, it has to go to that particular folder. Then I have said earlier, now this is a mail, now it has to go to this particular folder. So everything is known by the machine. So whenever it receives the things, then automatically it places the mail into the inboxes, respective inboxes. And next one is that unsupervised. So with respect to this supervised, the input features or the input labels as well as the output labels is also known to the machine. Here in the unsupervised learning, what happens, only the input is known and the output prediction is not known. So this we call it as unlabeled data. What is unlabeled? The final prediction is not known to the machine. Then what happens? It takes every data one by one. It tries to form some group among all these data points. So when it takes the first data, it analyzes it and it puts that into one group. Next, it takes the second data. It will identify how far this second data or the record is similar to the previous one, or how far it is different from the previous one. Using some similarity measures or dissimilarity measures, it can identify. So what happens, it can put it into another group. So whenever it takes the characteristics which are similar to the existing one, that can be placed in the existing group, otherwise it will form another group. So this is called as unsupervised. And reinforcement learning, this is act based on feedback reward. Okay, take a solution and wait for the feedback or reward. So if it is getting a positive feedback, it will behave in one way. If it is getting a negative, then there has to be some change in the model. Then it will try to adjust itself, it will try to correct itself, then it learns. Again, it will make this act and get the feedback. Based on the feedback, it will change its activity. So these are all the different types of learning. We have classification. The examples shown here are classification, regression, and clustering is shown. Right, so this pic shows the different machine learning models and algorithms. So these are some of the algorithms. In supervised learning, we have regression, and in regression, we have linear logistic, and in classification, we have so many models. General concepts alone we are it is given here. Unsupervised, we have the clustering and dimensionality reduction. Semi-supervised, and here we have self-training, low density separation models, graph-based algorithms, and in reinforcement, we have dynamic programming, Carlo methods, heuristic methods. And the last one is the deep learning, where we have the architectures, CNN and RN, neural networks, convolutional and recurrent neural networks. Okay. So now we come to this deep learning. So we know that artificial intelligence is a broad area. Under that, we have a subset as machine learning. And under this machine learning, we have a subset for deep learning. So what is deep learning? It learns the representations of data. Why it has to learn the representations of data? Because it has to understand what is this input data, right? So based on this understanding, it will give the predictions to the final output layer. So how is it this happening? So this uses hierarchy of multiple layers. So this actually biomimics the human brain, where we have a number of neurons. These neurons are interconnected in the same way. Here we will be using some processing units, and these processing units are connected to the next layer or the previous layer. Some kind of connections will be there. And all these units are playing a major role in computing the weightage for the different inputs. And based on the processing done through all these layers, the final prediction, what is my data in the input given? Then it understands, okay, this is the data in the input, or this is the image given in the input, some kind of thing. This is the text given in the input. And finally, it will tell me, okay, this is the text, or this is the image, this is the objects in the image. Like, it will give me the predictions. And again, it will check with the actual one and the predicted one. At the first stretch, we may not be getting the correct prediction. Again, you'll have to retrain the model. So this happens iteratively. So it learns representations of data, and this representation learning is done through hierarchy of multiple layers. So, and deep learning, it needs more amount of data because it has to learn by itself, right? The feature extraction is done by the algorithm or model you are deploying in the unit. So it has to learn by itself. So it needs more amount of data in order to identify the data, or whatever thing that we want to predict. So it is a biologically inspired neural network architecture. This neural network architecture, it has a number of layers. So this shows the difference, or how machine learning is working and how deep learning is working. So my input is given to the deep learning model. So here happens the feature extraction from every layer. I have input layer, I have output layer, and I have some intermediate layers, which we call it as hidden layers. So each of this unit is called as processing unit. Here we call it as neuron. Right. So once the feature extraction and all the processing is completed in the deep learning model, the final prediction or the classification, it will tell me what is the object, whether it is a car or not a car. You may be use this for predicting multiple classes. For different object, deductions also can be used. So in that case, you may be this model may be telling me, okay, there is a car in the picture, there is a bus in the picture, there is a person, like that. It will give you the probabilities if it is there or not. We saw that it is neural network is biologically inspired. Now this is the biological neuron architecture and neuron structure. Now I have here something called dendrites, and I have a passage kind of thing, a connectivity kind of thing here, and I have some output branches. So all my input branches, I call this as dendrites. This is how the neuron, through dendrites, it will sense the data, and this nucleus, it will process what is the sensed data, and it will process, and it will give some output signal, and this is passing through this axons, and finally these axon terminals will connect to other dendrites of the next neuron. So if this information, whatever I'm telling, if it is having more weightage, then it will be passed to the next dendrites. How much weightage we are giving for the sensed information. So based on that, the next set of neurons which are connected to this neuron is activated or not activated. So with this concept in mind, this neural network is playing a role. These are all the theoretical part for what we have discussed. Dendrites, it takes the input from the previous neurons. Cell body, that is the nucleus, it is doing some processing. Axon terminals, it transmits the output to the next neurons which are connected here. Fine. For this neuron structure, this is for one specific neuron. It is given here. I am having here, this is my
Hello.
input. So, yes, sir. Right. So this is my input layer. This is my input layer, which is represented by I. And I have a set of intermediate layers, which we call it as hidden layers. And the last layer is the output layer. So here, the whole processing is happening here in the hidden layer. So this left side picture, it shows one specific neuron. Each of these circles is called as a neuron. Now here what is happening, I'm giving the input. I'm giving the input x1, x2, x3, xr, all are all my input values. So now for every input, I'm giving some values. This is for one specific thing. We are talking about one specific neuron unit we are talking about. So what is happening? Now this input value x1, it is multiplied by the randomly taken weights. Okay, so how many ever inputs you are having, that many weights will be taken here. Okay, and this is summed together, x1 into w1 plus x2 into w2, x3 into w3, likewise it is summed. It is added here, and there will be a bias value for every neuron. So this is a fixed value. This bias value will be there for every unit. And once this is done, that is x1 plus w1, this is a common xw plus bias, this is the calculated value. And what happens? So this value is calculated in a neuron. Now, whether this value should be activated or not, that will be decided by the next function, AI. AI stands here for activation function. So we have different activation function, whether this information is needed for activating the next neuron or not. Will it be playing a role in finding the final output of what I want in my model? Okay, so this is one thing. So y equal to what I'm having here, x1, x, that is all my x features multiplied by weights for individual feature, plus I have some bias value. And once this is done, and I use some activation function, then it is meaning that whether this value or neuron should be activated in order to get connected to the next layer. Okay, so this is my input layer. So usually input layer, it just passes the input, whatever features you are giving. For example, if you are having 15 features in your data set, just pass out the 15 features here. Now what happens, all these edges are weights assigned. So how many ever nodes you have, for all the nodes in the next layer, we will be having a outgoing. So here it is shown only 4, but in between we have a number here. We have a number of nodes. So for every node, we have here the connecting lines. So how many ever weights will be there for the specific input. Similarly, for the second node, this second node is also connected to all the other nodes in the second layer. Similarly, this is my hidden layer 1. This is my hidden layer 1. And here what I'm having here my input multiplied by weights, and some bias value will be here, bias value for this node, bias value for the next node. Like that, I may be having a number of biases here for this node, right? And based on this x1 y1, sorry, x1 w1 plus this bias value is added with this one. So this value should be activated or not. If this neuron has to be activated, then all these connections will be activated. So I will be using this activation functions. And finally, you may be having a number of hidden layers in between. Then finally I will be getting output here to this output layer. So whichever has got more weight or activated, only that particular neuron in the output layer will be activated. So either here I'm having M class prediction, I'm having class 1, class 2, like that I'm having class M prediction. So whichever class has got the highest probability, then that class will get enabled. For example, I'm identifying some number 4. So what happens when this is my 4, I'm giving this input and different features are extracted. So how is it happening? Your 4, it may be having a straight line like this, maybe a straight line like this, it is a straight line like this. If you are writing, this is also 4, this is also 4. Okay, so now what happens at the first level, the different edges, the smaller level features are extracted and then it is combined with the higher level features. This is what happening in the hidden layers. So finally, what happens in my output class, I am having a class for 1, 2, 3, 4. So if my 4 class as having more weight based on the previous classes predictions and weight values, then my 4 class will be correctly identified. Suppose I know this is my output, sorry, this is my input, instead my prediction is different. What happens? I need to adjust the values in the backward. What values can I adjust? I can adjust the weight values and the bias values. So this is a general concept about the neuron structure. So this is a simple neural network. When we are having more than one hidden layer, then we call it as deep neural network or deep learning neural network. So here, the task of input is just to pass the input. And after that only we'll be using the weights and biases. And finally, number of class predictions will be there. So these are the major architectures of deep neural networks. We have artificial neural network. So the general thing, this is a feed forward. One direction, the data is flowing here. Same concept where we have this input layer and I have a number of hidden layers and I have this output layer, right? So each of the circle is known as the neuron. Here, why this is called as feed forward, the data is processed in one direction where this ANNs are used. These ANNs are used mainly for processing the tabular data, image data, text data. So this is another kind of neural network architecture, recurrent neural architecture. So here, what kind of data are mainly focused? This recurrent neural network architecture. So it focuses on the time series data or a sequence of data. So we said that when I'm composing the email, it will giving me the predictions. I'm fine. How are you? If I'm typing like that. So when I'm giving, I'm fine. I am. If I'm giving, how are you? I'm fine. So when I'm trying this, I am. It will try to give fine with regards. If I'm giving with, then it will automatically give me the prediction. WI. If I'm typing at the end of my mail, when I start with records, when I start this WI, it will give me that with records, like that. Predictions are given. So how is this? How is the things are happening here? Now it understands that the connectivity between two words, and it has learned a lot from the previous experiences, meaning that previous database. So whenever in a mail, after these statements or when you start the mail, this is how we will start. Okay, because the machine or the application has learned from a number of tons of data it has learned. So when I'm starting, dear, it will understand to whom you are addressing. It understands that respected. So respected, what can come there? Only the recipient can come here. So it will give me the prediction. After completing all my text statements in the inbox, in the mail content, finally I'll come to the end where I'm giving with records. Obviously, if I'm typing with WI, in that place it will give me the prediction. It should be regards. So how it understands? Because it understands the connectivity between one word to the other word. So we call this as recurrent. Okay, iterating over the same input. This is what recurrent neural network. So what happens here? The same kind of neurons are here. So it processes the information and also it is given as input to the same neuron again. So meaning that if I'm giving hello, I am fine. So if I'm giving hello, HELLO, it understands that H is there, E is there, LLO, right? So for these different letters, what there will be a matrix representation. Then based on the weight, if I'm giving HELL, so obviously the weight value, it will tell me, the prediction will tell me that next would be L, next would be O, some kind of thing. How it remembers? Because it understands, okay, user has typed HEL. It remembers that he has typed HEL. So there it has to remember the previous word or the earlier characters. Okay. So here we need some sort of memory to remember the sequential information. Fine. So if I want to remember, so first I'm giving H, okay, next I'm giving E. Now I understand, okay, H, E is there. Again, I'm giving L, okay, so L is attached with the H, E. Now I understand H, E, L is there. Again, next same input is given H, E, L. One more input is coming L, O. So it understands that this is how the statement will be. This is how the word will be. So the sequential information has to be remembered for the recurrent neural network. Right. So it's a type of neural network where the output from the previous step are fed as input to the current step. And here, in order to find the connectivity between statement or to complete a statement, the model has to remember previous words. And this thing, the main important feature of this neural network, the recurrent neural network, is the hidden state, which remembers some information about the sequence. So if it knows the previous words or characters, then it will give me the prediction. These are the different types of RNNs. I have here one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many. So I'll just show you here the picture, then I'll come to the text part. So this is how one-to-one, this part, and one-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many are there. Right. So where we use these recurrent networks and the applications. Right. So this one-to-one, the example given here is that image classification. So here one-to-one, I'm giving one input and it predicts that, okay, this is the input you have given. This is the image you have given. So one input and one prediction is there. And the next one is that one-to-many, like I'm giving an image. I'm giving an image. Say, for example, the dog is jumping in that image. Now it tells me that I'm giving the image. It tells me that it giving me a statement. The dog is jumping. Okay, so my input is one. Only one image is given, but I'm getting a statement which is of more words. And many to one. So an example given here is that sentiment analysis. So now what happens? I need to analyze a number of words, a number of statements in order to identify the emotions or the sentiments or the mind of people, right? So in this case, we use this model many to one. And many to many is a simple translation applications where I'm giving, if I'm telling the statement in one language, that will be converted to another language. Whatever words you are telling, that will be converted to the words of another language. So these are the different types of models that are available in the recurrent neural network. Okay. So this is a generalized picture of RNN where we have input. Okay, this is a time series input is given. Input is given at t minus 1. At t minus 1, I'm giving this x as my input. At time t, I'm giving this x as my input, and this is my next t plus 1. My input is given here. Now, what is given here? For this input, I am using some weightage. For the next cycle, again, this is repeated. Now, this output is nothing but weight and this input value. Input value is multiplied by this one. Now, this will become the input to the second state. Okay, right? And also second input is also considered, meaning that the previous state information as well as the current state information is considered in this network. Similarly, this is my input to the next layer, which is nothing but previous state information. Previous machine's prediction or output value is considered as input to the next layer, and the current state information is also fed to this neuron. So generalized information is given here. It is a weight and the input value. This is the previous state at t minus 1 time. At time t minus 1, what is my input and its corresponding weights plus the current state value is also considered. So this is a generalized picture for RNN and the different types of RNN. So next, coming to this convolutional neural network. This is a deep learning algorithm which can take input as an image, and it will try to classify this image. There are a number of stages or steps used in the convolutional neural network. It learns by its own from the image. It tries to extract the features from the image, and based on the feature extraction, it will give us the result, classification results. Right. So architecture of CNN, it is analogous to the human brain, where we have the neurons connected to each other and there is an information flow in the biological neuron structure, right? And this information flow, it makes an impression in the visual cortex. In the same way, this visual cortex is the final classification which we are talking about in the convolutional neural network. So here it can capture the spatial and temporal dependencies of the data through the filters. That is, when we do a stage, I will show you in the picture. So when we do some kind of processing, the filters are applied. What these filters are, is nothing but some features. It will tell you if this is a filter, this filter is for this particular feature. If any of the feature is detected using that filter, then it means that okay, this filter is for this particular feature. When you can identify, the model can identify, okay, this feature is available there, or else feature may not be available. You can understand that if these filters are giving some value, these features are available in the image that is considered. Okay, so components of convolutional neural network, we have convolutional layer, pooling layer, and finally we have fully connected layer. So this is the general architecture for convolutional neural network. So this is the input image. We have convolutional layer. We have convolutional layer. In between, we have pooling layer. Next time having a convolutional pooling like this, it is repeated. So convolutional pooling, convolutional pooling. So once all the features are extracted, so actually what is happening here, the feature dimensionality reduction has happened here. Okay, all the information of this image, it is represented in small number of units or small size of representation. Now at the end, once these features are extracted, the extracted features are used for doing the classification. So here we have this fully connected and we have this softmax classification, which will identify this image belongs to which of the final output classes. Okay. So you can see here in every stage, a small portion is taken and it is convolute. Again, this is pulled to a smaller size. This process is repeated. So all my features will be represented with minimum memory, and so that it is meaning that I have small number of features, but with the small number of features, my actual content is displayed. That is the thing we have to understand. Right. So this is a small example. Right. So we may be having this as my picture. Right. We will use a method called subsampling. So what happens? You may be having a large size picture, and after these operations, I'll be getting the same input with reduced size. Okay, I'm not losing any information. I may be getting all the information, but with reduced dimensions. right? So these kind of operations will happen here. One of the slide it will show. I kept it here, subsampling. In later slides, I will have them. So convolutional layer, it will have a number of filters that does this convolutional operation. So this is my input. Here it is shown in different layers. So input may be of a color image or it may be a black and white. So what happens? The channel wise representation is given for my input. A number of pixels in rows and columns is shown. Now this is my input layer. Over the input layer, I am applying some sort of filters. These filters are used to extract some features from the input picture. Now this is one specific filter which is identifying whether a beak is there in my input image or not. Once this feature is detected, if it is there, then this will give me some value in the output. Okay, so if I identify in particular place, if this value comes, then it says that okay, beak is there in the picture. Similarly, for every other feature, you can do this filtering operation. Okay, so we have input channel, that is my image in the pixels, and I have the filter. The filter is moving over the input image. Throughout the picture, it will be moving and it will be doing some calculations. Once I get the calculated value, then I can understand whether the beak is there or not. This step will be repeated for a number of times. So the objective of convolution operation is to extract the high level features, okay, such as edges, even some corners, some points. Okay, so we may be getting all these features, and in the next level, when we combine these edges, it may be represent some structure in the input image. Fine. So the first the CNN can have a number of convolutional layers. It can have a number of pooling layers. So the first convolutional layer, it is responsible for extracting the features, low level features like edges, colors, gradient orientation. In the next level, these edges may be clubbed together. Maybe this model may be trying to identify the combination of edges. The next level, it can add the previously extracted features, it can club together, it will try to identify whether the next level features are there or not. So every stage it tries to learn some small information, put that information in the next level, you enhance the information, finally you come with the conclusion the final object is available there in the picture or not. Right. So this is a picture over which the beak detector, beak filter is applied. So actually this filter moving over the picture. So it is moving here. It doesn't find this beak in this place. It is moved to the next set of pixels. Now it identifies. It is moving here. It is moving here, like this. Like this, it is moving throughout the picture. So whatever features identified and whatever features are interested in the next level of neuron units, only those features will be activated. Now if this is for a beak detector, this will be activated to the next hidden layer unit. Right. So kernel is nothing but the filters what I told here. This kernel is used to extract the features from the images. So it is usually it is a 3x3 matrix which moves over the input data, and it performs a dot product. And if this is a filter used for particular feature, then it will give you some value which is expected, so that the model understands, okay, this is a feature expected and this is available. So kernel moves on the input data which by a stride value. So if the stride value is 2, then the kernel moves by 2 columns. So what is it? Stride value. You can see here. This is a filter which is applied over this input image. So this is a 6x6 image. So what is happening here? This filter is applied. Now, for this 3x3 input feature, it will do some dot product. Okay. Now for this, how is it done? 1 multiplied by this 1 plus this is multiplied by this plus 0 multiplied by minus 1, the 0 multiplied by minus 1. Similarly, 0 multiplied by minus 1. Like this, it is happening. So finally, I will get one value as the output. Okay. So next, I'm moving this this filter over the next set of values. Now, how I have moved? This is moved after one row from the previous slide. Fine. So now this value is calculated. Similarly, now it is moving to stride value of 2. Now what has happened? This is my first calculation. I have done my calculation and this is my value calculated. Okay. Now here you can see here in the previous case I have moved my filter over, that is after one column I have moved it. Now I left 2 columns to the left of this one. I just started with third column. This is a stride value of 2. Fine. Right. So now what has exactly happened in that sense, in that case? So when I'm choosing the stride value, it is meaning that I'm trying to capture the features with minimum calculations without losing any information. So when I do the calculation at the end, I will be getting some output matrix which is of reduced size. Though I'm having the same information, but in a different format and in the reduced size. So this operation is done with the help of this kernels. So that is why it is given as stride value of 2. So these are the different kernels that can be used with the image processing. So this is the operations that are associated with these kernels. So this is a kernel that is applied to one image. This image is applied. This is convolute image. So what happens when this is applied, then the output will be like this. So this is an edge detection. Different edges are horizontally, vertically. We can detect the edges in the images. So when this filter is applied, my output will be like this. When this filter will be applied, then my output will be like this. So here only edges are detected. And sometimes it may be blurred or the edges may be sharpened. So different kinds of operations can be done with the help of the kernel. Fine. So instead of using manually made kernels, what this CNN will do, it will try to learn the filter from the input itself, and then using this kernel information, uh, it will try to do the convolution automatically. Right. And a CNN layer, the same thing what I said is given here. Kernel is a matrix of weights which are multiplied with the input to extract relevant features. So whichever feature you want to extract, if I want to extract the edge, you can give this. If you want to sharpen the edge, you can give this. If you want to do a blur, you can do this. You can apply this kernel. So this is also learned by the CNN. So kernels, actually a kernel, it is a single filter. When we have multiple filters together, we call it as a filter. That's it. So filter is nothing but concatenation of multiple kernels, where each kernel is assigned to a particular channel of the input. I said that my input may be black and white, where you have 2 channels, one representing one channel, the black, and the other one representing the white kind of thing. If it is a color RGB, 3 channels will be there. So different filters are given for these channels. Okay. So CNN layer with the kernel dimensions, if it is of height into width and the input channels are k, then we may be having in the filter dimensions k into h into w. That is how many our dimensions we have, how many our channels we have, that many filters will be there, because for every channel I am applying the filter. So in my output, that many output layers will be there. And stride, how many columns over which this filter is moving around. So this we call it as stride. So if I'm starting with this 1, if I'm using a stride value of 2, this strides over 2 pixels at time. If I'm starting with first pixel, next time the stride will start from third, and then it will start from 5. So like that, 2 pixels at a time will be moved together. And for a stride 1, this is like one by one it will move. You just start with 1 and complete a 3 by 3 matrix, then start with 2, then complete the next 3 by 3 matrix. Like that it is strided over. So the goal here is that we need to reduce the dimensions of the input feature. You can see here how much our dimension is reduced here. If my input of size w into h with depth of 3, right? So it is reduced to w by 2. Half the size it is reduced. Depth of 3 here, it is meaning that RGB. And height is reduced by 2 and the depth is also reduced. So ultimately we will have a reduction on the size of the feature map. So this is stride 1, how my output will be, and this is my stride 2, how much is how my output will look like. You can see here, this is my input image. The first 3 by 3 is mapped to here, this thing. You may be getting the value which represents this part. Okay, right. Similarly, for this one, I am having a reduced size. So when you increase the stride value, it is reducing the output feature set. So usually the 16 kernels or 64 kernels are used in the convolutional layer. So different convolutions performed are extracting the edges or the corners, some points, and the next level again convolution will happen in the top level, and in the next level will get more higher features. So stride 2 convolution, its main task is it reduces the size of the image or size of the intermediate image we took. So obviously the storage will also be reduced. This is an example. So the input image is of size 6 by 6 and I'm using here two filters, filter 1 and filter 2. So you can see here, when I'm doing this dot product, I'm having the value. This is for the specific filter with a stride value of 1. With the stride value of 1, so it is moving like this: 1, 2, 3. Then it is moving 2, 3, 4, like that. 3 by 3 matrix. This filter is moving over the input image. So I'm having this as the dot product output. I'm having this value. Right. So all my values are here. So for this 6 by 6. I'm giving this 3 by 3 filter. So with a stride value of 1, I'm getting my output feature as like this, something like this. 3 minus 1 minus 3 minus 1, like that. 4 by 4 I'm having. Okay. So you can see here, this filter is having a value of 1, 1, 1. In the same way, I'm having this value. Similarly, here also I am having this value. So now this feature identifies that this filter is identifying that this feature is available in the input image. That is what it is shown here. So these values are identifying. This 3 identifies the diagonal ones here, and similarly this 3 identifies in my output feature. This identifies, okay, there is a diagonal line in this place in the first 3 by 3 matrix like this. So this feature is learned. Similarly, second filter is applied. You can see this is another filter. So now with the same stride, I'm doing this. This is a simple dot product is done here. Okay. Now here, this identifies that this kind of feature. So I have some low value and I have high value and I have some low value here. So this matches here. This feature is matching here. So I have a low value, I have a high value, and I have a low value here. So this, we call it as output feature map. So now I learned this feature is available here. Okay, so with the help of this value. So I'm using here one 6x6 image, and I'm using two filters for each filter. In the first filter, I just identified diagonal ones. In the second filter, I just identified the straight line ones, middle line ones. Okay, so two features are identified. So two 4x4 images. So 6x6, from 6x6, now it is reduced to 4x4. Now it is for 3 channels. In the same way, for every channel, I'm doing this filter 1 and filter 2. Okay. So now what happens? So the input image, it is convolute to this output feature. This is nothing but extracted feature. So what feature you have extracted? Okay. What this diagonal one represents? What the straight line, middle line one represents? That feature is extracted. So once this feature extraction is completed, then we'll go to the next stage, fully connected. So what is this fully connected? So fully connected, here we have 36 features. In a matrix format, we have, in the fully connected, we have here something like in a serial order, we are arranging all these 36 values, x1, x2. Here we saw this, it is a 6x6 image. Now I'm writing all my 6x6 values, that is 36 values, x1, x2, x3, x4, 5, 6, like that. So I'm just writing it in a column vector, and then connecting this vector value to all the other nodes in the next layer. So this we call it as fully connected. So generally fully connected, it is meaning that every node is connected to every other node in the network. In the same way, here all my input is connected to all my output. Now we have extracted the features. This is a general concept, what is a fully connected. Now what we are going to do in the fully connected layer with respect to this CNN. Once this feature extraction, convolution, at the end of this convolution, we have extracted some information from the input image. Now this extracted information is given to the fully connected layer. Now it tries to identify, okay, based on the feature extraction, what will be my output class. So this is how it happens. I'm getting this extracted feature and all my values are connected to the layers. Right. So now what happens here? Now if I'm taking this 9 alone, this 9, it corresponds to the first 3x3 matrix. Okay. So I'll be having for this 3, it represents these 9 values, okay, right? So it is meaning that the first 9 values, x1, x2, x3, like that, I'm taking this matrix alone. All these things are corresponding to 3. Similarly, you can take the next set of values, 2, 3, 4, what it says, okay, or else that is how the output layer will be. Or we know that this particular feature is extracted. Okay, in the second filter, we have identified one more feature, so that you can enable only those features or only those parameters in the fully connected layer. Now, if these layers are there, okay, these are all corresponding to this 3. So only it connects to 9 inputs, not to the whole things. Similarly, for the next 9 values, you can take the next value for 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, this value and this value. Okay, all these values are corresponding to minus 1. Similarly, for minus 3. So what happens here? These how much the dimensionality is reduced. If the 9 values are this similar to this one, then it is mapping to 3. The 9 values are mapping to these values, then it is mapping to -1. So it is the dimensionality is reduced. Instead of 36 values, I'm using only 16 values in the next layer. So I will be representing 3 -1 -3 like that I'm having. Right. In here, whichever values I am activating, I'm just interested in only activating this node and the specific node. Accordingly, the weight has to be there. Then only those nodes will be activated and it will be connected to the next layer. Right. So some activation functions are used in the neural network. This is one activation function where if my values are ranging from 0 to 1, then I use this sigmoid activation. It is from 0 to 1. So probability based problems are using the 0 to 1. And this is the other one. If my values are negative as well as positive, then I can use this tanh. Then ReLU is the most widely used activations in the deep learning models, in CNN models, where we have linear value. If your value is 0 or lesser than 0, it is 0. It is not activated. And if it is greater than or equal to 0, it is equal to the input linear value, input value. So it is getting activated. So the function would be 0 to whatever value we are giving, 0 to the max of this value. So maximum of this two will be taken for ReLU. So this will be used in the CNN. This is the activation function. Then we have another concept. So now we have completed the CNN. We have completed the convolution part in the CNN. Pooling is the other part. So why this pooling happens here? Again, this is for dimensionality reduction. Instead of representing my data with more number of pixels, I still want to reduce, but I do not want to reduce, or I do not want to lose my information in the pixel. Then I'm going for this pooling concept. So subsampling is one of the concept here. This is what I told earlier. I have here the same bird picture in both the sides. I haven't lost any information here. So this is how I have to get. But the size is reduced. I have the same information. How is that possible? With the help of the available information, I'm getting the information as such. Pure parameters. Okay. Parameters to characterize the image. So we have two types of pooling. One is max pooling and the other one is average pooling. So max pooling, we can take the maximum value in the matrix, whichever stride we are using, that we can use the maximum value. And average pooling is that we'll have to take the average of the values from the portion of the image covered by the kernel. Fine. Now, this is one example for max pooling and average pooling. Right. So now this is a filtered value. This is a portion covered by the filter value. Now I'm choosing this max. I'm using the max pool here. So maximum value will be chosen. So here my maximum value will be 20, and here maximum value will be 30. Here it is 112 and 37. So this is max pooling. So still I'm reducing the size, but I'm not losing the information. With the help of these chosen values, I'm able to represent the whole information. Similarly, the average is average of all the 4 values. I'm getting from 16 values, from 4 by 4, I'm getting 2 by 2. Here also it is 2 by 2. Without losing the information loss, I'm able to get the same information. So this is one example for max pooling. I've used 2 filters. The same filters are used, filter 1 and filter 2, and I have I've got this feature map. Now I'm applying max pooling. So whichever will be the maximum, that will be taken for the next layer. So this was my maximum value, and maximum value. Fine. So that's my maximum value. So only these features will be considered for the next level. Similarly for this one, max pooling, right? So from the 6x6 image, when I do all the convolutional and pooling, Next, you can actually, we can have convolutional pooling like that. It will be repeated. So at the end, I'll be having 2 by 2 images. From 6 by 6, I'm having 2 by 2. Why I'm having two things? Because I have used two filters. So for every filter, I'm having a layer here. Each filter is a channel. So the next one is a fully connected layer. So the whole picture is given. So I have given here the image. Convolutional is happening. Convolution is happening. Max pool is applied again from this input feature. Now, whatever feature I'm getting here, whatever matrices I'm getting here, that will be again fed to the convolutional layer, and again pooling operation is applied. So every time when you apply this convolutional and pooling, my feature set is reduced. I'm getting a reduced feature set that is given to the next layer. So finally, I'm getting this flattened image. You may be having a matrix like structure. Now this matrix like structure is converted to a column vector, flattened image. Now this is connected to the fully connected layer. So fully connected layer, every layer is connected to every other layer in the next level of things. Finally, I may be having the prediction as cat or dog. So the features are extracted here. Like at every stage, you may be getting like eyes. This, if this is how the eyes, or this is how the ears. So in the first stage, it may be detecting the edges or some colors. Some low-level features may be extracted. Then in the next level, it may be identifying like eyes, ears, nose, whisks. All those features may be identified. Then the whole thing, face, hand, like that, it may be identified in the next stage. So at the end, all the things are flattened. The neuron values, the input values are flattened, and it is given to the fully connected layer. So whichever neuron has got highest maximum value, all those neurons will yield some recommendation to the output class. So based on that, the output class will be activated. So this is a simple flattening operation where I have here, this is a 2 by 2. I have all these values here. So simply I'm just converting this to a column vector. I have here 1, 2, 3, 4 values. I'm just writing it in the column wise, 3, 0, 1, 2. Similarly, the other one is also written here. So now this is, once this flattening is over, so we have given the input, convolution happens, pooling happens a number of times, flatten the image, and then you give it to the fully connected feed forward network. So this is a simple coding part. Now here, this is from Keras. So convolution 2D, it tells that how many number of this takes the input like 25, 3, 3. So 25 number of filters is taken actually here. It says input the number of filters, and it is 3 by 3. Filters used is 3 by 3. The size is 3 by 3 and the number is 25. And the input image size is 28, 28 cross 1. So 28, 28, you can see here, it is the number of rows and the number of columns in the input image. And 1 specifies black and white. If it is 3, then that represents a color image. So there are 25 3 by 3 filters. So once this convolution is done, then after that I'm doing this max pooling. So this is convolution model is added here, 25 filters is added, and after this I'm getting some output, and for this max pooling is applied. So max pooling, it says that this max pooling of size 2 by 2. So for every 2 by 2 it will do this max pooling. So it will choose from 2 by 2 matrix, it will choose this 3 because it is using max value. The whole thing is shown here. So this is the input image for this. So I'm using 25 filters, and the reduced size of every channel is 26 by 26. So we have 25, so 25 into 26 by 26. Now for every 4, every 2 by 2, I'm taking one max value. Then after that, still it is reducing. then second convolution layer, it is applying 50. So after this, I'm getting 50 and reduced size of 11 and 11. After that, again, I'm using 50 filters. So I'm getting this 50 layers, 50 channels of size 11 cross 11. Then after that, max pooling is added. This chooses 5 cross 5 for all the 50. Okay, now this is flattened. I'm having 50 channels. I'm having 50 channels, each of size 5 cross 5. So the whole thing is totally I will be having 1250 units. These many neurons will be there. So all these neurons will be flattened 1, 2, 3, 4 till 1250 will be there. This is given to the fully connected feed layer, which makes the final prediction for the input. So here the activation used is ReLU and softmax classification is used. So these are some of the applications where this CNN is used. So this is for a speech recognition where it is converted. The speech signals are converted. It is used in the CNN, and they may be these converted signals are identifying the words from speech. These are some of the applications where the deep learning concepts are used. Computer vision, where the objects are detected from the image using the learned model, deep convolutional neural network. For image transformation, we may be using some of the mobile apps like beautify applications may be using. So it will enhance our features. It will add some extra features. So those kind of applications are also using this deep learning. Right, image generations. So based on the features extracted, different combinations can be done. So for some kind of applications, instead of waiting for the data set or instead of waiting for these images, the extracted features can be used in different combinations to automatically generate the realistic features so that these applications can take these data sets in audio processing like text to speech or speech to text. These kind of applications are also using these deep learning concepts. And in natural language processing, so where the syntax and the grammar part is meant for the model to learn. So the part of speech tags it has to understand. And in natural language processing, the sentence formation. So it has to understand the sequence of the statements, sequence in the words. So there we use this deep learning concept. This is again natural language where the machine translation is done. Right. So in medical diagnosis, skin cancer, in breast cancer diagnosis and all these deep learning models are used because we need to train the model with a large amount of data set, and we need to have more accuracy in these applications. So when you train your model with more data, when you train the model with more accuracy, then these applications will play a major role in the medical field, which are wherever the prediction is more sensitive in there, these applications can be used. Since because of this neural networks deep learning characteristic, this neural networks deep learning concept is playing a vital role in these kind of applications. This is another application for deep learning. Diabetic eye detection. Right. So this is another application where it tracks the energy level of the data center. So it can identify, it can use this information to cool down the data center. So where this deep learning concept is playing a role. system, the neural network concept is playing a role. So this is using the satellite images. It tries to capture the images and the environmental conditions, and it is actually doing this recognize poverty, signs of poverty from the satellite images, such as the condition of roads and what resources are there, are these resources in what condition is there. So everything can be analyzed by the satellite images using these neural network models. Okay, so it is playing, this neural network is playing a major role in most of the applications in our day-to-day life as well as in the research sectors. Thank you, participants. Sir Ramanan sir, it is done. Sir, am I audible?
Ma'am, continue. How many students are? Ma'am? How many are there? 3 students. Mostly, actually, I don't come. I want to alter for some other person. It's better if you put some other day, it would be better. Maybe after 28th. Ma'am. Only 2 days, 18 days. Okay, ma'am. Okay. Ma'am, I think you try to explain it. No problem, ma'am. Very good. The line learning, thanks. Thanks. Okay, students. Okay, is whether it's audible. Try to give the feedback. Don't forget to give the feedback. Try to give it up as early as possible.
Sir, feedback you have posted in the chat box, sir.
No, ma'am. I've given a link, ma'am.
Yes. Students, please give your feedback in that link already sent in the mail.
Ma'am, I think it is a great honor to propose a vote of thanks to everyone who helped us make the webinar such a great success. Thanks to our chief guest, Dr. R.M. Bavadarni, for taking part in today's webinar. Thanking you for an exciting and thought-provoking address on the topic deep learning and its applications. I thank my colleagues, I thank my HOD, principal, and my students for taking part in this webinar. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Madam Bavadarni, madam, thanks from my side and our department side. We are very happy to have you in this pleasant morning, and our students have got very good knowledge in this area. I too participated in that webinar. It was very nice.
Thank you, ma'am. It's my honor.
So it's once again I am telling we are very thankful for you for this wonderful webinar, madam. Thank you very much. Thank you, madam. Sir,
thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
Okay,
madam. Thank you.
We can leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shall I leave, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
madam.
Yes.
Please leave, madam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Students, you can leave, ma.